All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us on a Tuesday. So we're on the air Friday, maybe around 11:45 a.m. towards the end of the show, and news broke that Michael Avenatti has been convicted, found guilty on all three charges in the Nike extortion case. Let me rewind here real quickly, if I may. About 6 months ago, maybe 7 months ago, my co-host J.D. Sharp reached out to Michael Avenatti on social media. We had correspondence there, and Michael had agreed to come on our show. And that was at the time where, he was having some legal problems, some legal troubles. And there were a lot of people at that time that I'm sure he didn't trust. But he gave us a shot. He came on our show. And ever since then, until he went to jail, he's been doing our show every week. And what has transpired here over the course of the last month and a half is shocking. I'm not going to lie to you, very surprised. I was surprised when he was arrested. I was surprised when he went to jail. And I was surprised on Friday when the verdict came in, found guilty on all three charges in the Nike extortion case, can receive up to 40 years behind bars. The guy joining us on the show right now, his name is Larry Neumeister from the Associated Press. He's done a fantastic job in covering this case. Larry, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Pretty good.
So, Larry, let's start with the reaction. Obviously, you were in the courtroom. Not many people were there. You were in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Can you start just from the beginning here? Explain what you saw at that time when Michael enters the courtroom, and just kind of give us for radio what you saw.
Well, the verdict came down very fast. I think the judge said there's a verdict and he immediately brought the jury in. Thus, normally in that circumstance, all kind of prosecutors and everybody else would pack into the courtroom. But in this instance, it was not all that many people, and Avenatti was staring right, toward the jury. And then as the jury forewoman, in a very quiet voice, said guilty on each count, he just kind of kept staring at the jury, which was sort of what he was doing even when the jury was being selected. He was kind of just glaring at various people. I don't know whether he was trying to make human contact with them or whatever, but he stayed that way for a good 5 minutes afterwards, just kind of glaring at the jury.
Now, some people were surprised at this verdict, some were not. Let me get your take on this. You've been covering this since day one. Were you surprised at the verdict of guilty?
Not really, given the evidence in the trial. However, it is the kind of verdict that I could see things happening on appeal. Like it's a type of law that there aren't too many cases where attempted extortion is really tried. There's all kind of questions about what's allowed into evidence, what's not allowed into evidence, and things like that are questionable. And this is a judge who a couple of years ago overturned a jury verdict in another case that had unusual aspects of the law that I'd never seen in the courtroom before. It was a police officer who was engaging on all kind of cannibal, like sexual cannibal sites, and including like writing about his ex-wife, or at the time his wife and everything. And they tried him on charges that he actually was going to do these things, and the defense was that it was all fantasy. And the jury convicted him, and then a year later, this same judge came back and overturned the jury verdict and found him not guilty on those, cannibalism charges. So, Avenatti, when he walked out of the courtroom, he thanked his lawyers in a very genuine way, telling them great job. His lawyers actually were very good. And I imagine he feels confident that he can still win this on appeal.
What part of the trial itself do you think swayed the jury to make the decision they made? Was it when Gary Franklin testified against Michael Avenatti?
Well, during Franklin's testimony, Avenatti was very animated. He was practically mocking the testimony. He was laughing out loud. He was threw himself back against the wall at one point, acting so stunned and shocked, clearly sending the message that he thought Franklin was lying. And I'm not sure that helps, that kind of behavior helps in that situation. I think it was also damaging when his former office manager came in and testified at the very same time he was trying to get millions of dollars, really tens of millions of dollars out of Nike. At the very same moment, he was really broke. His law firm had been evicted a few months earlier from their law office. He owed over $11 million, and that was just in court-ordered debts that he owed. I imagine he probably owed a few million more at least. So, I think that was particularly damaging against him. And his own words, like when they had video and audio of him communicating with these Nike lawyers, and it was really crude and aggressive. And he was threatening to knock billions of dollars off of their market cap, and that he was going to stage this news conference at the start of March Madness and right the same day as their earnings were being reported to damage them as much as possible. And I think the jury just concluded that, they agreed with the Nike lawyers who testified that they felt like they were victims of a stick-up or a shakedown.
During the trial, at any point, was Michael Avenatti and his team able to introduce evidence, we'll say text messages between players that were supposedly bribed X amount of dollars to go to schools by Nike? Was any of that actually implemented or actually brought into the trial?
Well, I think the evidence that would have, that I thought actually gave him a shot was these communications between this entertainment executive who was, advising, the amateur basketball coach on how to get, what he wanted from Nike. And he was very much saying they should get Avenatti because he can really go after Nike and can, be aggressive. And in that sense, I felt like the jurors might see that as, well, they hired Avenatti to be really aggressive and take it to the edge, and that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I think that those, some of those text messages and communications between Gary Franklin and his entertainment executive advisor, I think some of those things really could have helped Avenatti. But in the end, the jury decided against him.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Larry, listen, we appreciate your time coming on with us again, doing a great job in describing what took place in the courtroom. Thank you so much for what you do, my man. Really do appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, there you go.
Thanks a lot, Larry.
Larry Neumeister, Associated Press reporter who was in the courtroom when the verdict went down of guilty in the Avenatti case. So as I was saying earlier, we've known Michael Avenatti for about 6 months or so. Gotten a chance to know the guy. Like I said, he was great to our show, coming on a weekly basis, and make no mistake about it, the reason why we had him on was not to talk about his legal troubles. We had him on because he's an entertaining guest. I consider him to be a pretty smart guy. He was entertaining, funny. We enjoyed having him on, and if I had an opportunity to have him on again tomorrow, I would do it immediately. And the argument that a lot of people have made to not just us, but the likes of CNN, MSNBC, all the networks. And by the way, he was on Fox News as well. Is that how can you give this guy a platform? So let me just clear this up right now for you idiots out there that do not understand how radio works, who do not understand how TV works. Let me be very clear for you. If O.J. Simpson was walking down the street, if O.J. Simpson walked into Fox News and said, I want to do an interview with Laura Ingraham, I want to do an interview with Sean Hannity, I want to do an interview with Tucker Carlson, they would do an interview with O.J. Simpson. Now, why would they do that? Well, you could say, why would you do that? O.J.'s a double murderer. He's a felon. He's a murderer. The reason why they would do it is because it would be a fascinating interview. It would be an interesting interview. So this idea that you cannot, and by the way, I shouldn't make the analogy of a double murderer to somebody who did some financial white-collar crime, because that's what Avenatti did. Make no mistake about it. He is now a convicted felon. But the idea that you shouldn't give somebody, and by the way, it's not giving somebody a platform when we invite somebody on as a guest. It's a guest to come on the show. It's not like we just say, here you go, Michael. Here's 25 minutes. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. We control the interviews, and we ask the type of questions that we want to ask. So it's not like, when you say you're giving somebody a platform, that would be like if we invited O.J. Simpson in studio and he was able to promote, his website or something financially. That's not what we do here. We don't give people a platform. We invite guests on our show.
I would call it's still a platform, but we control the narrative in the platform. We control the conversation on that particular. But you can't say that our show, and I mean, we have 15, 20,000 listeners a week just on the radio side of things. That is definitely a platform.
Now, if you're one of those people that is anti-Michael Avenatti and has been anti-Michael Avenatti for several years, but you kept your mouth shut when Michael Cohen went to jail. You kept your mouth shut and didn't have anything negative to say about Paul Manafort or the others, Roger Stone, the others surrounding Donald Trump. You didn't say anything negative about them, but all over social media, like the idiots out there like Meghan McCain, who want to blast Michael Avenatti, but when it comes to certain members of Trump's administration, she keeps her fat mouth shut. But that's okay. If you're one of those people, you have zero credibility. And I mean zero credibility. Let me be very clear. In my personal opinion, Paul Manafort shouldn't have been treated like a terrorist. Paul Manafort shouldn't have been in that prison. He committed some crimes. He was guilty of some financial crimes. But I don't believe Paul Manafort would be in jail if he didn't work for the Trump campaign. And I'm going to say the same thing about Michael Avenatti in a different circumstance. I don't believe Michael Avenatti would be in jail right now if he didn't decide to go after Donald Trump. Now, I understand Nike is a huge business, one of the biggest businesses in the world, and you better not have any skeletons. You better not have any skeletons in your closet if you're going to go after some of the biggest businesses in the world. But the point I'm trying to make is this, and it's very simple. This all correlates to Donald Trump in one way or another. Now, am I blaming Donald Trump 100% for the reason why Michael Avenatti's behind bars? No,
80%.
I'm not. But no, that's not true either. But what I am saying is that I personally believe that if Michael Avenatti didn't go after some of the most powerful people in the world, he probably wouldn't be in the situation he's in now. He is in solitary confinement, and it's a joke.
Well, the issue with Michael Avenatti is that he did not dot his I's and cross his T's when he went after the President of the United States and when he went after arguably a top 5 apparel company, or we'll call it a top 2 apparel company in the world. And there's an interesting relationship here, but Nike actually pays Trump Tower money every year for rent to the tune of about $20 million in New York City. So there is a relationship there. I don't know how strong it really is, but there's definitely something to that. Now, as far as this Michael Avenatti getting actually convicted of this, to me, it looks like Michael Avenatti was asked as Gary Franklin's attorney to get the largest possible settlement from Nike. And in order to do that, like any lawyer does, you have to prey on their weaknesses. You have to find out what they don't want to, what can hurt them, what they're afraid of, and that's all he was really doing in my opinion.
Well, listen,
and it's not like, let's say that Avenatti they had agreed to pay him $50 million. Do you think Gary Franklin was only going to get 1.5? I mean, the fact that they were having that conversation in the first place was because Michael Avenatti was representing Gary Franklin. He wasn't Michael Avenatti, the civilian, and to me that would potentially be extortion.
Well, I understand,
but as representing, that's why I think this case is going to do well in appeal for that particular reason. And from what I understand, and I actually had a conversation, I had someone call me yesterday personally, who is a friend of Michael Avenatti, who would talk to him.
She's also an attorney for Michael Avenatti, and I spoke to that same person. And I certainly wanted to get to that, and we should talk about that. But before I do, instead of we were breaking down the case, but I was talking a little bit about the reaction from the media, the reaction and why members of the media like CNN, Sean Hannity, Fox News.
Well, you're talking like Jeffrey Toobin, where he basically said that he was lied to.
I want to start
that he was hoodwinked.
Well, I want to start by talking about CNN's Brian Stelter. And Brian Stelter from CNN, this is his reaction to the Michael Avenatti conviction, and this is a little bit of what I was talking about. Have a listen to this.
Michael Avenatti is back in the news. The swamp is not just about Trump figures. I feel like there are so many other figures that are part of the swamp. Avenatti has just been convicted on 3 counts for alleged extortion and other crimes. I've been getting some grief from Sean Hannity this weekend, speaking of Fox, right? From Hannity for once suggesting that I thought Avenatti could be a serious candidate for president. So give me a media critique. Was that stupid on my part? What do you make of how Avenatti was covered by CNN and MSNBC?
Well, I'll tell you what I make of it. So what? At that time, nobody on CNN or MSNBC knew that he was going to be a convicted felon. That's number one. And for Brian
they're all expected to be able to predict the future. Obviously, they have their crystal balls, and they can see 5 years into the future.
But Brian Stelter didn't know that, and I think he's being a wuss on TV. Why should you have to apologize for having the guy on? You know, the guy's a convicted felon now of extorting Nike. Who cares? That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing to have a guy on a show.
And the key word is now. He has not been sentenced.
Right.
There is, for the time being, he is a convicted felon, but obviously there's going to be a very, very stringent appeal process, and that's been confirmed by several sources.
And then Piers Morgan, a guy who was let go by CNN because he can't get any listeners, can't get any people watching his show. He decided to go on the Sean Hannity show kissing his ass, because that's what Pierce does, because he wants back on maybe Fox News, who knows. But this is Piers Morgan talking about Michael Avenatti on the Sean Hannity show.
Michael Avenatti, I mean, just looking at him and listening to him, he was like a sort of refugee from the set of Prison Break. I mean, he just screamed sleazeball. And every time I saw this guy, and he was popping up on cable news, not Fox, I might add, but on CNN and MSNBC, maybe every 2-3 times a day. And they were treating him like he was this extraordinary Superman-like savior who had come to rescue the world from devastating Donald Trump. And yet the more he talked, the more it was clear it was never about his client, Stormy Daniels, who he completely, in my view, destroyed. You know, he destroyed her reputation. He destroyed her life. He took her money. And rather than look after his client, what he was doing was really boosting himself and making himself out to be something which he was eminently unqualified to be.
Okay, first of all, Piers Morgan, you're an idiot. Number one, he didn't destroy Stormy Daniels. First of all, he made all these appearances on TV, and in fact, he helped Stormy Daniels put more money in her pocket. And the reason why I say that is because Stormy Daniels right now is making about 5 times more money than she made before she hired Michael Avenatti for appearances and for films. So obviously, Piers Morgan, I guess he doesn't know anything about the porn industry. What a shocker, stiff. Piers is a complete moron. Okay, what does he mean when he says he destroyed Stormy Daniels? Now, I understand that she had a book deal. All the money he took from Stormy was a $100 retainer fee. I don't know what's going to happen in court.
That's what we were told. That's what he told us verbatim.
I don't know if
he was compensated by Stormy Daniels.
That's a fact that for his legal fees, all he charged her was $100. But for Piers Morgan to get on the air and call him a sleazeball, you think Piers Morgan, if he was asked on Fox News about Donald Trump, you think he would call Donald Trump a sleazebag? Of course not, because Piers is trying to get a job on Fox News. He's a stiff, and nobody watches him, and that's why he was fired from CNN. For him to say that Michael destroyed Stormy Daniels is idiotic. It's idiotic, and it's not factual. What a shocker. And I remember when Piers Morgan talked about gun control, he had no idea what he was talking about when he did his show on CNN. He got destroyed with every argument because he didn't do his homework. Clearly didn't do his homework here. He makes an appearance on the Sean Hannity show, and he knows he's going to bash Michael Avenatti, and that's his job to do it on Fox News. Just a complete idiot, not factual. You mentioned Jeffrey Toobin. Here's what Jeffrey Toobin said on CNN in regards to Michael Avenatti. Here's what he had to say.
Going through, I mean, the total collapse of his life is really sort of extraordinary. And frankly, I feel kind of snookered because I took him seriously.
Let me be clear on this one. Back a few years ago, people should have taken him seriously. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't think anybody should be apologizing for it. Just like we're not apologizing for anything because we didn't do anything wrong. And very clearly, if Michael Avenatti was out of prison today, we would have him on the show. Even behind bars, we would still have him on the show. So for these people out there that want to call him names and call him a scumbag, and for the idiots like Piers Morgan out there that want to call him a sleazeball, you have zero credibility if you never said anything about anybody in Trump's administration like the Paul Manaforts or the Michael Cohens of the world. Many people who were against this guy from day one were against him because of his politics. Yes, he is now a convicted felon. And I've said over and over again, if you're going to go after companies like Nike, if you're going to go after politicians, and if you're going to say things on national television about politicians, you better not have any skeletons in your closet. Yes, he's been found guilty. We're going to see what happens in the appeal. But make no mistake about it, folks. He is not a violent criminal. He's not a murderer. This is white-collar crime. This is extortion. This is about money. And we're going to have to see how this thing plays out. Right now, he is a convicted felon. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But for people in the media, the wusses out there, like the people on CNN, like the Brian Stelzers of the world, that are, well, do you think I made a mistake? No, you didn't make a mistake. Why don't you just shut up and don't worry about what people on the right have to say? Who cares?
I don't have a problem with Stelzer asking that question. I do have a problem with Jeffrey Toobin claiming he was snookered. Michael Avenatti appeared on CNN 114 times in 6 months.
Yeah, he was on a lot.
114. I mean,
don't blame him.
That's once every 2 days.
I don't blame him. It's good for his career.
Because they thought that Stormy Daniels, the smoking gun situation with Stormy Daniels, which Michael propelled exponentially for Stormy Daniels. Imagine if Stormy Daniels was representing herself having those conversations on those major networks and media outlets, it wouldn't have gotten anywhere. But with Michael Avenatti behind Stormy Daniels, that's why she is able to command 5 times what her standard pay was for the scenes. That's why I know who she is. That's why probably 95% of the country who isn't a porn enthusiast knows who Stormy Daniels is because of Michael Avenatti and how he propelled her case on a national scale through the platforms like CNN and even Fox News, where he was afforded that opportunity. Even the Tucker Carlson interview. I mean, that thing was viewed 30 or 40 million times on YouTube.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's exactly, JD, the point I'm trying to make, which is this.
And it actually propelled Tucker Carlson's career as well.
But
it made him more legitimate to the staunch Donald Trump supporters because of how aggressively he went after Michael Avenatti and how he basically just hijacked the entire interview.
But the point you just made, that's a very valid point, and that's exactly what I'm talking about here. There's a reason why Tucker Carlson has covered Michael Avenatti, and there's a reason why he invited him on the show. And if you look at YouTube and you look at the most views in the past couple years, the most viewed segment is when Tucker Carlson invited Michael Avenatti on the show.
And it's not even close.
It's not even close.
Not even a conversation.
You're right. And why is that? Well, I'll tell you why, folks. Because regardless of what you might think of Michael Avenatti, he gets people to listen. He gets a reaction from people.
He is interesting. He is quick on his feet.
Absolutely.
He's a good marketer.
Yeah.
And he treated us, and I posted this on Twitter, but he treated us and everybody here at the Vegas Take, me, you, Brian, Chris Wynn, Jason Stein, everybody here, he treated us with kindness and respect from day
He
one.
did.
And all our callers that are listening right now, we're talking probably 500 or 600 different calls that he took when he was on our show.
Sure.
He treated every single one of you with respect as well.
He
Unless, of course, you went after him first.
But for the trolls that want to go after him on social media, for the idiots that have nothing better to do with their lives, they won't say anything negative about any Republican or anybody in the Trump administration, but you just want to constantly go after Michael Avenatti. Well, let me tell you something, folks. You ain't going to get an apology from me. You're not going to get any apologies from me, and let me be very clear on this, and we'll have him on again. I guarantee you we'll have him on again.
There's actually a chance that Brian and I could jump on an airplane, go to New York City, and actually have an interview at MCCC.
But I'm just speaking in general terms. Guess what? We're going to have him on again. If you don't like it, tough cookies. I don't care what you think, because we are going to have interesting guests on this show, regardless of what their political beliefs might be, regardless of the fact if they might have committed felonies, regardless of the fact if they might have committed, white-collar crime. We don't care, because if we think they're a good guest and they get a reaction from people, we're going to have them back on. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to take your phone calls on this. Your thoughts on Michael Avenatti, the conviction, your thoughts on him making all these appearances on all these shows, including ours. Take your phone calls, 702-257-5396. Again, 257-5396. Your calls on the other side of the break. You're listening to The Vegas Take. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, glad you could join us on a Tuesday talking about the verdict that came down in the Michael Avenatti Nike case. Convicted on all 3 charges. He will be appealing it. But, let's get some reaction. Let's start with, and we'll take your phone calls, by the way, on this at 702-257-5396. But I want to start with playing some audio from Danya Perry. This is one of Michael Avenatti's attorneys, and this was a press conference, a very brief press conference that they did literally right after the conviction, right after Michael Avenatti was convicted and found guilty. This is Danya Perry, her reaction to the verdict.
Disappointed in the verdict in this case and even surprised by it. But we have preserved some significant issues on appeal. We will be pursuing that. And we stand by our client, and we'll just look forward to the next phase. He is a fighter, as you all know, and he's staying strong, and we'll be there.
So you guys spoke to him. What's his reaction?
I think he's in a bit of a state of shock. but he's already strategizing and thinking forward to the next stage of this. So,
what is the next stage?
Well, the next stage is his sentencing and his appeal. He's got obviously 2 other cases, but Avenatti is Avenatti, and he's a strong guy, and obviously he's disappointed, but he's a fighter. So thank you all.
So that's a typical reaction there. Of course, I'm sure everybody was surprised and in a little bit of a state of shock. But here's something that's interesting to me that we've been talking about on this show, and it is the fact that he is in solitary confinement being treated like a terrorist. Here is his attorney, Danya Perry's reaction to that, because it appears as though this is their number one priority, is getting him out of solitary.
For the next hearing on the 25th?
He's being housed at the MCC in Penn South in solitary confinement, like a caged animal, and he will be there until the next trial.
And you haven't been able to change those conditions?
We will be filing a motion shortly in order to try and change his conditions of confinement, because they are inhumane. Thank you.
So I mean, there you go. There you go. I mean, I agree with her on that one. Guilty or not, for him to be treated this way is ridiculous. And we both spoke to one of Michael Avenatti's personal friends and attorney yesterday on the phone, and she gave us permission to just say a few things about what's taking place. Yeah, that is their number one priority. They want to get him out of solitary confinement. They are surprised by the verdict. They are going to appeal. And, that's the latest of what's going on right now. I mean, he's not allowed really to interact with just about anybody.
No, you can't even take interviews.
Yeah, I mean, it's absurd.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's completely crazy. I agree. We're taking your phone calls on this. Your thoughts on Michael Avenatti, 702-257-5396. What do you think about some of these media pundits out there saying, "Ooh, I told you so. I told you so. I knew he was a scumbag." These people like Meghan McCain and these people going on social media acting like the guy just committed, a double murder or a shooting. Maybe some people are treating this guy like he killed a police officer. We're not going to do that. And again, I'll say it one more time. If you're one of these people that has defended everyone in the Trump administration, even those that are in jail right now, like Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen, if you've never said anything negative about some of those people on the right, but you've decided to go after Michael Avenatti, you have zero credibility. We're taking your calls. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. Why don't we start off with Les? Les, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's up, Les?
Yeah, I just called you a week or so back regarding the sentencing or the conviction rate was 95%. I've been through the system. And also what I forgot to tell you back then was that this is what Al Sharpton's been doing for his whole career, is shaking down big corporations, and that's how he makes his money. I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't maybe win in regards to that, because Al Sharpton's been doing it for so long and gets away with it. I don't know how.
Well, I would say I think Al Sharpton is a racist. I think Al Sharpton is a race baiter with no credibility. I wouldn't say Michael Avenatti has that sort of character. Certainly
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm saying Al Sharpton's been shaking down big corporations.
I understand.
Avenatti's been doing and getting away with it. That's why I'm a little bit surprised.
Is Al Sharpton even an attorney?
No.
No, he's not.
I'm not sure.
Well, let me ask you this, Les. Let me ask you this, Les. Okay.
So that is surprising, considering the fact that he's actually not an attorney, and Michael Avenatti was a attorney on retainer on behalf of Gary Franklin.
Answer your phone call. We're getting another call, JD.
Go ahead.
Les. I wanted to ask you a question just in regards to Michael and going after Nike. I know you've called it as a shakedown, and look, he's a convicted felon. I'm not, you can't take that away. But with that being said, don't you think it's a good thing that Michael Avenatti brought up the corruption that is going on between Nike and college basketball? I think this is a positive thing.
Yes, I do. I have no problem with him bringing that up. Nike is, to me, I don't. I'm sending back my tennis shoes to their Oregon office here shortly.
Well, I hear you, man.
Just because of the Kaepernick thing.
Yeah.
But also, now that you consider Avenatti an associate, I don't know, maybe not so much a friend, you need to get on his mailing list, put money in his commissary. Cards and letters when you're behind bars mean a lot. So, that being said, send him letters and cards and positive stuff. Just talk about run-of-the-mill stuff.
All right, Les.
Like
I appreciate your phone call, Les.
Does he even have access to those type of things when he's in solitary?
I don't know.
Because if I recall Shawshank Redemption, I don't believe that's the case.
I don't know. What I do know is that He's not a violent criminal. What I do know is it's not like he kidnapped somebody or he sexually assaulted somebody or he put his hands on anybody. It's an extortion attempt, and we could debate this all night on whether what exactly he did was worthy of a crime. But what we do know is that he was convicted and then he was found guilty.
I think this sets a very interesting precedent for the future with aggressive attorneys who are trying to get the largest possible amount of money on behalf of their client.
That's a valid point.
And I think it's really interesting that you would basically have to prove, to me, you would have to prove that Michael Avenatti was going to get paid $25 million by Nike and not give it to Gary Franklin. That he almost on the phone, he would have had to tell Nike that, by the way, this money is for myself. It is not for my client. And I don't think any of that came out. So I am very surprised under those circumstances that he was considered, or that he was found guilty of all three counts. And it makes me wonder, even as a Trump supporter, if there was some type of influence from the Department of Justice or from Barr or Trump.
Right.
I really don't know, because again, he flew too close to the sun with the President of the United States and one of the biggest companies on the planet.
But as I've said before, and I'll say it again, you're not going to get any apologies from us. Zero. And if we had an opportunity to have him back on again, we would. Number to call, 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation. We're talking about Michael Avenatti. Guilty, all three counts. News broke late on Friday. Reaction to that, again, 257-5396. Go to Daniel. Daniel, you're next up on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Daniel?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I've been listening to you guys for a couple of months. I like your guys' show because you guys do both sides, the parties. I'm fairly new to politics and stuff, but I care about what's going on in this country. So just to be upfront, I did vote Republican this time. I used to vote Democrat. But to be on topic of what you're talking about, Avenatti, Mr. Shapiro, I respect your opinion. I like your arguments, but I'm calling you on this. You're going too soft on him. He's guilty. And
Did I say he was innocent?
First time.
Did I say he was innocent?
Okay, you never said he's innocent.
Okay.
But if it was the opposite, like you just said, if it was a Republican doing it,
Not true.
no,
you're 100%.
Asking for their head right now.
No, you're 100% wrong. Did you not hear me just bring up Paul Manafort? I just said Paul Manafort, who was Donald Trump's campaign manager. I
did hear you say that.
I just said he wouldn't be behind bars if he wasn't Donald Trump's campaign manager. So
I do. I give you that one.
Well, I mean, what you're saying is not true.
Okay. All right, I give you that one, but a lot of different topics. You're always going softer on the stuff you believe in.
Give me an example. Give me an example of
this guy. It isn't his first time doing this.
It's his first time It's his first time ever being convicted of a crime. I'm not going to speculate. Okay, so what else?
Easy come, easy go.
What else has he ever been convicted of?
That was really good, Daniel.
Hey, I got away with a lot of stuff, and I got caught for one thing, and I did time.
Okay.
Hey, he has to man up. He has to do his time. You can't be soft on him, bro.
What do you mean? Okay, so
but I think you're probably right. This is. I don't think this is the first time that he's ever been involved in an aggressive attempt to get the highest possible settlement on behalf of his client.
What do you want to do, Daniel? So you think I'm being too soft and saying he shouldn't be in solitary confinement, being treated like a terrorist because of a white-collar crime? Is that why you think?
Matter.
What do you mean? Okay, first of all,
taking a lot of money.
Okay, first of all, it doesn't matter, not it don't matter. Number one, and number two, when I'm talking about white-collar crime, you're telling me that you're okay with a man that commits white-collar crime being in solitary confinement, being among some of the most violent criminals in the world. You're okay with that?
I'm pretty sure he's well protected.
That's not what I asked you. I didn't ask you if he was well protected. I asked you, and I'll ask it again.
And that was part of the excuse.
You're okay with a white-collar criminal.
Crime. Okay.
You're okay with a guy being treated as a terrorist in solitary confinement 24/7. You don't have a problem with that.
It's probably safer for him.
I'm not asking you if it's safer or not. I'm asking you if you are okay with that.
It don't bother me one way or the other. Bro,
okay.
All right. You know what I'm saying? I'll be honest. It doesn't.
All right.
If he's in solitary confinement or not.
All right, Daniel. But, I appreciate the phone call.
It's interesting.
I appreciate the phone call, Daniel.
I think that Avenatti, I think that he is more safe under those circumstances. But again, I mean, this guy has boxing experience. I think he can kind of handle himself under different circumstances. But being in solitary confinement, being in the same place where El Chapo, who had $150 billion drug empire, is at, considering the fact that he actually wasn't paid any money by Nike, to me, it's very over the top. But look at Paul Manafort. I mean, he's at Rikers Island.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've tried to be consistent when it comes to white-collar criminals. Michael Cohen, look at the way Michael Cohen is being treated. Is Michael Cohen in solitary confinement? No. Michael Cohen is being treated like you would normally be treated under those circumstances, as a white-collar criminal.
Who actually went after Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen?
Well, obviously, it was Avenatti that went after Michael Cohen.
But
Paul Manafort's a separate issue. That was the IRS, and that was money laundering, and those were financial situations. The DOJ took that over. Michael Cohen, all that stuff was started
but
with
considering
Avenatti.
how close they were to Trump, obviously Trump wasn't involved in any of that. It was the other side. It was the.
Well, that's what I said. I said if Paul Manafort wasn't
the Democratic side of the spectrum.
I think that, like I said, if Paul Manafort wasn't Donald Trump's campaign manager, he wouldn't have been as public, and I don't think he'd be behind bars.
Thinking about that, I almost wonder if Avenatti being treated the way he is kind of collateral damage for Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen with what happened to them.
It's a part of it.
Kind of an eye for an eye type of situation.
It's a part of it. I agree, but a big part of it is people don't realize this. Michael Avenatti has been going after Donald Trump for literally decades. This didn't start when he became the president of the United States or when the Stormy Daniels stuff came out. And by the way, the idea again, just a complete buffoon in Piers Morgan to say that Michael Avenatti destroyed Stormy Daniels when Stormy Daniels is now making 5 times the money she made before this scandal was brought to anybody's attention is utterly ridiculous. It's not factual. And Piers Morgan is probably the one person who's watching more Stormy Daniels porn than anybody else on the planet. So, I mean, I just want to make that clear. Piers, there's a reason why he's not on TV anymore, because he sucks at what he does. He didn't get ratings on CNN. He's sucking the you-know-what from Sean Hannity, trying to get a job on Fox News. So what does he decide to do? The coward that he is decides to go on Fox News and just destroy anybody on the left and destroy Michael Avenatti. Why? Because Sean Hannity's listeners love it. That's why. This guy is a phony. Morgan is a phony. At least when Sean Hannity gets on, he attacks one side consistently. But Piers Morgan, he decides to, whatever network he's on, he decides to attack. He is just a absolute coward. I'm so sick of this guy. I'm absolutely sick of him.
He's a rent-a-host.
It's exactly what he is. It's exactly what he is. He's like the George Zimmerman of police officers. That's what he is. He's a rent-a-host, just like George Zimmerman was a rent-a-cop. Anyway, we have our producer, Jason Stein, in studio.
My opinions are for sale.
I get so pissed off at this. We're taking your phone calls, 702-257-5396. Again, the number to call if you want to join the conversation, 702-257-5396. Stein walked in studio with a little smirk on his face.
No.
Okay.
That's a permanent smirk. No, I've been monitoring the comments along the side of our YouTube page, and normally I'm looking for people that are making fun of Brian, and those are in there too. But what really stood out to me is the number of people that have a comment about Avenatti, and as many people in our audience that love him and support him, and there are hundreds because we get the emails all the time, like, how's he doing? When's he coming back on? What can you tell me about him? There are a lot of people who hate him too, and we're getting a lot of people on our YouTube page. Some of them are the usual suspects, and they are dancing on his grave, and I want to just throw a few of these out here, have you guys react to them. Susan writes, hey guys, how are you? Did you hear Michael Avenatti was found guilty by 12 Trump supporters? I heard they're wearing MAGA hats. She also writes, I heard that President Trump called into the jury room and demanded that they vote guilty. Please discuss this outrageous fact. Carolyn writes, very true, Susan. The jury was guaranteed $250,000 each by Trump every time they vote guilty. So, again, making fun of the possibility that someone was paid off here, which, who's to say, right?
I definitely wouldn't call it an impossibility at this point.
Well, listen. These people that are making these comments are people that are living in their mom's basement with nothing better to do than to attack an attorney that they've never met before. And my question to any of them that are making these remarks is, where were you when Paul Manafort went to jail? Where were you when Michael Cohen went to jail? The answer is they were nowhere. They were silent, but they want to go after Michael Avenatti because they didn't like his politics. They didn't like the fact that he was going after their commander-in-chief because they're all wearing the Donald Trump knee pads. That's what's going on here.
Speaking of where is someone, where's Si-Win?
Today's Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Another non sequitur.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Someone who calls themselves Tucker Carlson. Is it time for In the Ring with the creepy porn lawyer? Am I early or late?
These people need to quit their day job. Maybe go back to their day job. Don't quit their day job because these comments to me, they're just people a bunch of losers.
B-Dub, you sound sad, Brian. You want your buddy pardoned after being convicted of extortion?
I want to comment on that too because I like Michael Avenatti. I enjoyed having him on the show. Thank you, Stein, by the way, for that for the Avenatti update.
Yeah, really good job, Stein.
I enjoyed having him on the show. And, I do consider him a friend. That's fair to say. With that being said, the idea that anyone that has any guest on the show, and we've had plenty of guests come on this show. I wouldn't consider them friends. In fact, I consider them the opposite. But I still have it with some of the guests. But for for just argument's sake, just because you have a guest on the show doesn't mean that you're butt buddies with the guy. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But it's just an example of, if you get to say something about Tucker Carlson on Fox News, he had Michael Avenatti on his show. Is that his buddy? Makes no sense. 702-257-5396. The number to call again, 257-5396. Let's go to Pat. Pat, you are next up on the Vegas Take. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Pat?
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I'm not a right. Well, I've never called your show. I do have some experience in the federal conviction system. I am a ex-felon. I went through the federal trial. I didn't make a plea deal. I went all the way to a jury. I was found guilty on a whole lot less than I was initially charged with.
Mm-hmm.
I saw I love my country. I don't hate the prosecutor that went after me, although they cheated, and that came out in court, and I saw things wrong. Here's a couple points that I'd like to make. First off, let me say this. You do take both sides at times. I'm not a huge fan of yours. I am a conservative, switched from a Democrat, independent now.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went through the system, I can tell you this. Because I won so many charges by the jury in federal court, the sentencing guidelines they gave me were so far out of whack for what I was convicted of. I mean, way, way out of whack. Trying to give me 30 years on a sentence that should have carried 2. Did 5, by the way. But the guideline person went to such an extreme that it made no sense on a white-collar crime. Now, when I look at Michael Avenatti, look, is the guy guilty? I'm sure he is. I didn't read the papers. Did he get too much time, in my opinion? Yes.
Well, we don't know how much time he's going to have yet, though. That's the thing.
I don't, but I'm saying he was convicted of 3 extortions, a pretty serious.
He could. Well, let me just be clear, Pat. He could spend the rest of his life in jail. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
Well, I think it's ridiculous, and
I do
I'm
too.
not a supporter of that, and I certainly don't like Michael Avenatti.
Right.
He wouldn't be a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But see, things start, if you look at the guidelines, they start with what they call a base level offense, which is your groundwork, and then they do enhancements to you to add these up.
Can I ask you a question, Pat? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what were you convicted of? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, because you sound like a
What I was
pretty
actually
educated
convicted
guy.
of was money laundering,
Okay.
in the racketeering in the aid of money laundering.
So white-collar crime.
Right. I was charged with a whole lot more. I mean, I was charged with 28 offenses.
Pat, were you ever in solitary confinement?
I was.
See, I have a problem with that, Pat. You're not a violent criminal, or
No.
we're not a violent criminal. We're glad you're doing better now. I have a problem with that. Look, the people that should be in solitary confinement are the ones that are a threat to themselves or a threat to others. And based on everything I've heard, Michael Avenatti is neither of those.
No, I have to disagree with you a little. He's in there because of a request. I'm almost positive.
Well, I know exactly why Pat. I spoke to his attorney yesterday. I know exactly why he's in there, because when you look at what happened with Jeffrey Epstein in that same place, it is the people that are running that jail. They don't want another suicide to happen. So because of their shortcomings, they're penalizing Avenatti. I have a problem with that.
I'll be the last one to disagree with you. I can tell you this: Avenatti would probably. I mean, I'm an ex-Golden Glove fighter. I mean, I even fought Roger Mayweather. But beyond that...
Did you really? When did you fight Roger?
I did, and it was 1982.
Wow. Well, you're a guy I don't want to mess with, Pat. Go ahead.
No, I'm an older guy, man.
Okay.
I'm not
Fair enough. Go ahead, Pat.
I'm a grandfather and everything else.
Well, good for you, man.
So let me say this. He needs to be in that position because there are plenty of people in there. I don't care how good a fighter you are, you will get hurt really bad in there. And he's...
well, then put him in another prison then.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could lower his whatever he's going to get, but the problem is the charge he was convicted of, he's not going to get that because of the extortion.
All right. Well, listen, Pat, I appreciate your phone call. I'm glad you're doing better in your life. And
one other thing,
quickly,
on the deal with the other guy, what's his name, Cohen?
Yeah, Cohen. Yeah.
I mean, these guys are getting too much time by their guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to look up. Anybody can look it up, and then they'll see what the enhancements are and how ridiculous they can be.
Well, listen, I agree. I think we agree on more than we disagree, Pat. And I'm glad you're doing better. You turned your life around a little bit. And
oh yeah, totally. I own restaurants here and everything in Vegas, but
appreciate that, Pat. Thank you for the phone call. Appreciate your perspective. And look, this is a serious situation, but Pat's another example of someone who committed a white-collar crime, who called in, who said, "Yeah, I was in solitary confinement as well." I disagree with him. I don't think
money laundering, racketeering. Clearly, there was more intention. Then again, Michael Avenatti. People aren't thinking about this. He was his attorney.
Yeah,
he was Gary Franklin's attorney. The only reason they were having that conversation was because he was signed on, retained by Gary Franklin as an attorney to get X amount of dollars out of Nike.
Right.
And I don't see how you can prove that Michael Avenatti was going to take 25, say he got 30 million, that he was going to take 22 million of that, and he was going to give Gary Franklin even 8, which is more than 1.5 million that Gary Franklin talked about, but he was going to take that extra money that he shouldn't have gotten, and the sole purpose of that was to compensate himself for his own debts.
Right.
And I think part of it sounds like what Larry Neumeister, who was on our show, just said. He had $11 million in money that he owed clients, and I think that something with that is a big issue potentially to the jury.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I guess going back to what we said a little bit earlier, we have no apologies on this show.
Why would we?
Well, there's a lot of idiots out there that even people on the left who are like, well, I made a mistake interviewing this guy. Did I make a mistake? This guy's this guy's that. There's a lot of people that have been interviewed over the years that are much worse criminals and have done far more serious things than Michael Avenatti has done.
In your opinion, O.J. Simpson is a double murderer, correct?
Yeah, and I have no problem in saying that if O.J. wanted to come on our show, I would have him on.
He is not a convicted double murderer. But in your opinion, in my opinion,
he was found liable in the two murders.
But yeah,
in a courtroom.
In both of our opinions, he is a double murderer.
Absolutely.
Michael Avenatti has not killed anyone.
No, he's not a violent criminal, but you understand the point I'm trying to make.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are some really bad people out there, and I would invite him to come on the show because I think it'd actually be a pretty good interview. Not everybody in the media that's interviewed, the person that's interviewing them doesn't necessarily have to believe they're a great person. My thoughts on Michael Avenatti haven't changed much. He may have broken the law, and it appears as though he may have extorted Nike. Now, obviously, there's going to be an appeal. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. But again, I'll say this one more time because I think it's very important. For the way that some people are talking about him and attacking the media for giving him a quote-unquote platform, many of these people have zero credibility because you never went after people on the right. You never went after Paul Manafort. You never went after Michael Cohen. What happened to all the people on the right that have spent time behind bars, that have worked in the Donald Trump administration? You kept silent on that. What happened there? But now you want to go after Michael Avenatti. I don't want to hear from you. You have zero credibility. And the Pierce Morgans of the world have literally no credibility at all.
Now, one concerning part of all this is that Michael Avenatti, I believe that the way federal law works is that Michael Avenatti cannot apply for an appeal until sentencing takes place. But sentencing is in June. That's 3 or 4 months away. That means that he can't even start the appeal process until June, from what I understand, as far as
he's going to be behind bars for a long time.
The actual structure, the chronological structure of how this is going to play out.
And he's never going to be able to be an attorney again.
Which is concerning. If he's in solitary confinement for 4 months, I mean, that can really weigh on someone.
This is a guy that has won over $1 billion in settlements and cases, who at one time was probably the most recognizable attorney in the world, and now that has been taken away. He will never be able to be an attorney ever again, ever. And I'm sure that has crossed his mind, and I cannot even imagine the things that are going through his head now. But we're going to continue to monitor this story. We are going to continue to cover it. And any new developments in this case, we are in talks with his attorneys on a regular basis now. So any new information that we receive, we will certainly bring it to you. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, the son of the late, great Jerry Tarkanian, Danny, will be joining us, talking about his new book, Rebel with a Cause, coming up next on the Vegas Take.